scenarios of business as usual levels of carbon emissions, he says are unrealistic. That I don't know. Do you think they're unrealistic, Malcolm?
I cite a study in there where they said that the United States could make the transition from fossil fuels, by like 2030 at a cost of less than 1% of our GDP. Now, that would be painful, but what's more painful? Having 50% of your population have to migrate inland, or
Okay, thanks. Bad news. We can live with less energy, but economic managers want growth. If growth falters, the economy crashes. With the current level of CO2, there are raging fires, soaring heat levels, melting ice caps. But the problem is, unsure if current Earth's sensitivity to CO2 is accurate. Maybe it's more sensitive, and this is something, we haven't killed a planet before. Number 3, other global challenges. 25 million tons of topsoil lost yearly. We must change agricultural practices. Overuse of fresh water, aquifer depletion and pollution. Species extinction 1,000 times pre-industrial rate. Social and economic problems, debt and inequality. So even if we manage CO2, we still have a systemic global crisis on our hands, and unintended consequences from possible tech fixes. Number 4, systemic crisis. We humans have overshot Earth's long-term carrying capacity for our species. I didn't put it in here, but if you haven't read Jared Diamond's book called Collapse, it's a real good projection of this, but it doesn't refer to climate change as is now. It doesn't refer to the United States. Probably came out about 10 years ago.
but he reviews societies that have successfully faced challenges, environmental challenges, and he reviews societies that did not,
That's right.
went extinct.
The Mayans,
Norse
Greenland.
and he lists the characteristics of societies that failed, and the United States, is a check mark on every item on that list. Although he doesn't say it, it is.
So here he says once again, we've done what we've done with the temporary subsidy of fossil fuel, but now we see supply constraints and side effects of extraction. Only reduction of population and overall resource consumption, along with a rapid reduction in our reliance on fossil fuels, can adequately deal with systemic overshoot. Just decarbonizing does not deal with overshoot. And he says investors have made out, while those who use their time and labor did not. There's no tech fix for inequality. Let me move it again. I agree with this one too so much. Can it be done without a crash? Probably not. Economists versus environmentalists and human rights advocates disagree. Our current normal way of life, and I'm quoting him, is toast. Thus, he advocates a controlled crash would enable partial recovery of lower population resource use. Idea of controlled crash has been around for quite a while for those who have gotten over denialism and are not affect phobic. In other words, those who can tolerate the fright. There are two strategies for controlled crash. Global power holders agree that real threats to global order exist and accept offer to help from all the folks who have been considering all these strategies. Or we can work from a grassroots idea of resilience in the communities. And he has a book I haven't seen yet, the Community Resilience Reader. And we've been working on, at Omni, we had yet another climate change-based group, and it had to do, we called it Transitions, and it came from Rob Hopkins' ideas, got started in the UK in 2006, where you reskill, you go back to more simplicity, permaculture as a way to, everybody grow food, everybody do a victory garden, that kind of thing. And the group failed, so we didn't have enough interest. But it's something I'm very interested in because it's something I do already since I have a farm and produce food. cabbages, for example, have excess cabbages that I bought today. Sometimes it's eggs. So, resilience building must maintain supplies of food, water, energy, basic necessities, and social cohesion under great stress. And no one mentioned this book, but it's something I've had my eye on for quite a while. Rebecca Solnit's book, A Paradise Built in Hell, The Extraordinary Communities That Arise in Disaster, which is what we're seeing right now with Houston. Let's see, where are we? So we're almost done with this, and then we'll get to the ones that I really want us to talk about. Some who would prefer to shake things up, or even to destroy society. There are those who feel that way. That kind of frightens me myself. And so Heinberg asked, are we doing enough to avert system crash? No. The question should be, what can we do? And he mentioned a couple of books here, David Fleming's Surviving the Future, and John Michael Greer's The Ecotechnic Future. John Michael Greer is really heavy reading. It's kind of hard to read for me at any rate. He gets very involved. Heinberg says it's hard to envision what might be coming next because we're bounded by the knowledge of our own reality. He says what may be coming after modern industrial life might differ from the same way that Iron Age agrarian empires differed from hunter-gatherer. The great discontinuity, he calls it for now. Only time for short-term actions and get priorities straight. In other words, protect the vulnerable, preserve the best of what we've achieved, and live a life that's worthy. Having a few more hands on deck and a few more resources to work with can only help. With the dire situation, as several of these authors are talking about, I want to bring two more books, or one is a website and one is a book. The website is called Nature Bats Last by Guy McPherson. He thinks the planet is already doomed, and so what he's doing, he's become a hospice worker, and he's moved off the grid. So if you're curious about, he's an environmental biologist, emeritus from the University of Arizona, and if you're curious about that prediction, Nature Bats Last is the website. The other book was, I already mentioned it when we did Sixth Extinction, and it's Derek Jensen, The Myth of Human Supremacy, as if we know it all. So those two could easily be discussed in the same frame of reference as what we're basically doing right now. Anybody comments on this article by Heinberg? Because now we're getting to the good stuff.
Well, between the two articles by Wallace and Wells and Heinberg, we pretty well have a summary of everything that's gone wrong.
We do.
And that has to be corrected.
Yep.
In just a few years.
Well, the victory plan that Klein South put up on the climate mobilization is so inclusive. And if you were to read the whole 60-page thing, I'm sure it'd be even better. But I have a several-page summary that's the executive summary. So it responds to, as she thinks we should, it gives possible solutions to most of the problems that we've seen. So if you all want to move straight on to that, we can.
Always qualified if humans choose.
That's it.
To do.
If you want to.
They all agree about the doom.
If you want to look quickly at the LEAP manifest that Naomi Klein put in the back of her book, No, It's Not Enough, we can do that. And she's Canadian and she's speaking to Canada. But as another first world country, we could apply it to ourselves.
Yes, it does.
Dual citizenship. Actually.
Yeah, does she?
It does apply.
During the Vietnam
Thank
War,
you.
and they're
I
saved
didn't
from
know that.
healthcare.
So, looking at this, the League must begin by respecting the inherent rights entitled the original caretakers of this land. There is a United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Number two, latest research shows we can get 100% of our electricity from renewable sources within 2 decades. By 2050, we can have 100% clean economy. That I don't know. I wonder. Number three, no new infrastructure projects that lock us into increased extraction decades into the future. Number four, communities should collectively control new clean energy systems. Number five, we want a universal program to build and retrofit energy efficient housing. 6, we want high-speed rail powered by just renewables and affordable public transit to unite every community in the country. 7, we want training and resources for workers in carbon-intensive jobs, in other words, retraining. 8, we need to invest in our decaying public infrastructure. 9, we must develop a more localized and ecologically based agricultural system. 10, we call for an end to all trade deals that interfere with our attempts to rebuild local communities, regulate corporations, and stop damaging extractive projects. 11, we demand immigration status and full protection for all workers. 12, we must expand these sectors that are already low carbon: caregiving, teaching, social work, arts and public interest media, national child care program is long past due. 13, since so much of the labor of caretaking, whether people or planet, is currently unpaid and often performed by women, we call for a vigorous debate about the introduction of a universal basic annual income. 14, we declare that austerity is a fossilized form of thinking that's become a threat to life on the planet. The money we need to pay for this great transformation is available. We just need the right policies. An end to fossil fuel subsidies, financial transaction taxes, increased resource royalties, higher income taxes on corporations and wealthy people, a progressive carbon tax, cuts to military spending, and 15, the last one. We must work swiftly towards a system in which every vote counts and corporate money is removed from politics. Anybody want to comment on that? Because I would almost say let's not, just because the victory plan does so much more than, implying.
I'd like to see an analysis of that 15-point list of those items that are locally based and those that require national and international effort.
Yeah.
That would clarify that 15 list. Too many items for me to hold
I know,
simultaneously.
But this is more for us to see that there are possible solutions. I don't know that we can discuss all of the solutions.
Well, I have a
understand it
book.
all.
How many of you have that book? I would really recommend it. And the link is printed at the back of the book.
You mean no is not enough? Is that what you're talking about?
No, it's not enough.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even better, Dick, is the victory plan.
Okay, and you said that we can go back to your original link, and that will lead us, Bonnie, because she doesn't give that. She cites it though.
In what I worked out, what you're seeing here,
Yeah.
it talks about the climate mobilization. And if
Yeah.
you go to that website, the climate mobilization, you'll get the victory plan on it. And you'll also get the full 60-page victory plan, not
Right.
just this executive summary.
Right.
But just go to climate mobilization and you'll find it. It's
Or
a very
your
interactive
link
site.
that you sent us.
No,
will get
it's
us
not
there.
on there, no, it's not on there.
No,
This
it-
is new, this was never mentioned on the Omni site at all.
Oh.
This is stuff that.
But she
came
mentions
from-
it in her-
From that article, she does.
She
Yes,
does.
yes,
She
yes.
does.
Right, good, okay.
We get to
Now, this was the victory plan 2016, co-founder Ezra Silk. To date, domestic and global efforts have fallen woefully short. If we do not act immediately on a scope and scale commensurate to the emergency, runaway global warming, etc. Now, we need to move it down. We're getting more to the good part. America's home front mobilization during World War II provides us with a pattern. And so under Roosevelt, we had a mobilization plan. In addition to subsidizing historic production, miracle, to address the war emergency, and I think of that woman with her arm up like this because she went to work in all of the factories while the men went to war. So there was that, widespread conservation to the point of critical resource rationing, extensive efforts to gather, preserve, and carefully coordinate resources facilitated the extraordinarily successful war effort. Wasteful consumption was understood as antithetical to the effort. Popular media and posters declared that not supporting these collective goals would aid the Axis powers. Concept of economic mobilization gave a singular national purpose. It employed powerful deficit spending, increased taxation to combat inflation, controls over distribution of raw materials and basic goods, also identified with increased equality, full employment, and victory over a clear present danger to national security. Many sectors that must be transformed for the ecological crisis: energy, industry, agriculture, forest management, water use, transportation. Solutions are both systemic and personal. Let me see where I am. So, this is taken as a pattern from President Roosevelt in July 1941, mobilization for World War II. She states that this would be a changing resource, that as we get deeper into activating the mobilization plan, the victory plan, things might change. The objectives for victory: restoration requires cooling the planet from its present levels of approximately more or less 1.2 Celsius above pre-industrial temperatures back to 0 Celsius above such levels. Humanity must also reverse ecological overshoot by shrinking the ecological footprint of the global economy from 1.6 planets to approximately half a planet. Have any of you read Edward Wilson's Half Planet? Edward O. Wilson, PhD, biology, Harvard or Yale. Well, they're taking some of his ideas also.
What's that about?
Half planet, that we need to set aside half the planet reserved as nature had it, and not be messing it up so much. Anyway, we'll get to that too. Additionally, the sixth mass extinction of species must be stopped by returning species extinctions rates from the current highly elevated of 10 to 100 extinctions per million species per year to the pre-industrial. Finally, we must deacidify the oceans and realize the 4 freedoms. We'll get to the 4 freedoms in a minute. Okay, so things to restore a safe and stable climate. Humanity must drive the economy to net zero greenhouse gas emissions as rapidly as possible. U.S. must reach net zero gas emissions by no later than 2025, and the world community no later than 2030. Additionally, we must mount a large-scale greenhouse gas drawdown sequestration effort. For that, drawdown efforts can take decades or even centuries to cool the planet, depending on their scale and scope. For that reason, the government should research humane methods to limit warming or to cool the planet in the near term in order to prevent uncontrolled global warming. Now, kickstart the mobilization. Declare a national climate and sustainability emergency. That would be the presidential decree. Set pre-industrial greenhouse gas air quality standards. Add all 15 greenhouse gases and have them tested. 3, order zero emission plans for large and middle market firms. And the idea is if a firm makes $10 million or greater, they must have within 1 year a plan to cut their emissions to net zero by 2025. There are certain sectors such as aviation and steel that would have to be worked with to get that cut appropriately. Here are the 4 freedoms of the 21st century. This reminds me of the children's lawsuit with James Hansen and Mary Christina Wood's book, Nature's Trust. That's another very good book to read. She's the one who has worked with the children also. Right to a healthy and stable global environment. Right to healthy food, clean air, and clean drinking water. Right to life-affirming work, a living wage. Right to full democratic participation in government and at the workplace. Now we get to some real specifics. Look at this one. Mobilize the Federal Reserve. In cooperation with Treasury, should mobilize its considerable financing powers to make ample funds available for all aspects of the climate mobilization as it did in World War II. It would include creating, executing financing plans for mobilization projects, purchasing bonds to regulate interest rates, quantitative easing, money creation, and a variety of other methods to maximize employment, stabilize prices, and moderate long-term interest rates, using environmental sustainability as a new governing mandate. Establish new federal government agencies. Now, during World War II, that also happened. 158, and here they suggest 12, such as the Climate Mobilization Board, which would be staffed by professionals in climate. Mobilization Labor Board, convene labor, corporate, and federal representatives to monitor and manage labor relations to ensure an active and healthy workforce in the transition. An Environmental Impact Accounting Service to administer a greenhouse gas rationing system. And then let's keep moving on. Fair shares greenhouse gas emissions rationing. Now this goes in a little more detail. Federal government in partnership with state and local governments institute a rationing system. Citizens would be able to sell their unused rations back to the government for cash. Energy and electricity, and it's more complex. Accelerated abandonment of fossil fuels is central to the Victory Plan. They need to be completely replaced. Here he mentions Our Renewable Future by Heinberg and Fridley. Here's a quote. Argue that a global transition to renewable energy will cost approximately $200 trillion. The most feasible transition strategy is an enormous build-out of solar and wind. They do not advise nuclear because of Fukushima, and they do believe that we can do it with renewables alone. And that part, I just don't know about.
Yeah, that's really.
Yeah, we need to read that book and see why they think that that's possible.
Yeah. They're not considering this generation for nuclear.
Yeah, right, the small nuclear reactors are what I'm thinking about, that are replicable, don't cost overrun, and don't use materials to make bombs.
India's got a program.
Pardon?
India has a program of developing thorium reactors.
Yeah.
The United States had thorium reactors are non-nuclear proliferation, and they have fewer waste problems than our current uranium fuel reactors. And so, good luck to the Indians.
Yeah.
Maybe we had one, and we shut the program
It was
down.
all money, it was all because of money, is my idea about that, but at any rate, I'm sure.
Thorium is more plentiful than uranium.
Here he speaks about a super grid and a smart grid, and that's not my knowledge base, but it would be something similar to Rural Electrification Act of 1936.
We definitely need it.
Yeah. It must begin immediately. Eliminate fossil fuel subsidies, end of fossil fuel exploration, ban on all new fossil fuel infrastructure, including extraction, transport, export, domestic power generation, infrastructure construction, and decommissioning of all fossil fuel infrastructure by 2025. Yeah. Yeah, transport mobilization. This is a big one too. Retrofitting of car makers to supply the war effort, as in World War II. Strict rationing of gasoline. Victory speed of 35 miles per hour, can you imagine? Rideshare programs. And they can go on to speak about cities in Europe that have no cars in their downtown area. We must move to electrified transportation. And I thought to myself, what's happening with flight, and there would have to be something special for that with liquid fuels, is what is mentioned here a little further down. But to rapidly transform U.S. domestic transportation sector to zero, they come up with the Transportation Redesign Administration. So the Department of Transportation Resources could make for accelerated phasing out of manufacture and sale of fossil fuel, cash for clunkers. This is where it gets kind of foggy, Alternative electrified transportation systems will need to be manufactured and installed throughout all urban and rural transport corridors. High-speed rail, electric light rail, electrified vehicle transport systems, high-density implementation of solar bus rapid transit. I understand that Fayetteville is talking about rapid transit.
Oh, yeah, they are. They're
Springdale is
exploring
too.
a plan to have a bus that runs down College.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And maybe on 49.
Yes.
I heard that.
You're not ready to comment yet.
Yeah,
There's been talk about having a special bus lane on 49 all the way to Bentonville. And picking up people in between, like at Springdale and Lowell and so on,
Really?
with designated parking areas. This is still in the planning stages and they want input. And,
yeah. I would like for us to take a little break here and have comments, because this is still, we've still got several more pages here, and it's just so much information. We have about 25, 30 minutes, we need to go about 3:30, and we can easily get through this, but we have to watch our comment times as well. Anybody?
I just have,
We need a break.
the thing that struck me about this last paper, I mean, there's some truth in Heinberg's and Solomon's and in this paper, for sure, but it seems like this paper emphasizes still trying to maintain a society that's similar to ours. You know, when they talk about full employment, you know, part of our problem, like if it is the level of consumption that we have, the level of manufacturing, and there are certainly jobs that are don't have a negative impact, you know, as like, you know, childcare and healthcare related things, but I don't think we can manufacture ourselves out of the crisis. And Heinberg's analysis always emphasizes that we're going to have to be functioning at a lower level.
Reduce consumption.
Yeah, and I don't think this plan.
Actually, you know, they're not saying it, but when they talk about reducing the overshoot from 1.6 Earths to half an Earth, that is enormous. And I don't think there's any way you could do that without drastically reducing consumption and manufacturing.
And
But I would be much more comfortable
Right.
if they were explicitly saying that.
And we come to half Earth conservation in a minute, in another couple of, I'm sorry this is so long, but I really want us to have this in our face, and then you can go and look at it on your own time and study it a lot more.
Well, let me make sure I know where to go when I get home so I can read this.
Just go to climate mode.